Dagda agus tá fáilteóibh is mis an Scéalaí Beag. Hello, and you're very welcome. I'm the little storyteller. It is Patreon Insider time. So we have hit the mid of the month, and that means it's audio time. So with the support of my patrons on Patreon, I produce kind of regular like Dagda stories where I explore the ancient Irish kind of deity, but also my relationship with that deity. And so today's story, audio telling of the story. It's called To Walk the Mountaintops, and it falls into that my relationship with the Dagda element of my work. Um, my partner and I, Laura O'Brien, have the privilege really of being born and living on our island of Ireland, and it is again I'm totally biased here, but it's a fantastic and beautiful place. For all of its size, it's also so small and you can, within a very short space, drive out of your home and be in mountains or be by the sea or be in forests. Like it's easily done. And part of the work that we do is to go around the island to places of they're known as national heritage monuments. So they've been recorded by archaeologists for their significance or for the impact of what they are, so that there's a record of them. So on archaeology.ie, there's an ordnance survey map that actually highlights all of these locations, and it's it was staggering for me to actually begin to look at that data because the scope and breadth of it's just everywhere. It's just everywhere. There's these small little red dots on the map, and each single red dot is a place of some form of archaeological or historical significance. Not all of them will be of spiritual significance, but it does depend on like how your spirituality is formed. And Laura and I, I think it was a cold December. It may have been over a year or two ago. We found ourselves up in the mountains chasing down something known as a Fulucht Fia. So I do kind of cover in the story. It's the written version is available, of course, but a Fuluchtvia is it's seen as a very early, a kind of Neolithic almost cooking pot. So it was a trench, a big broad trench carved into the ground where it would be then lined with stones. So large kind of stones we moved to slab the sides, but then also put a basin in the bottom. Um, and every time you come across one of these troughs or trenches, it has a fire pit right near it, like and the archaeologists have kind of gone over and dug it and excavated it, and uh, the, they were able to quantify these things at full sphere because not only would you have this trench shape, and not only would you have the fire pit and the record of the heat upon the landscape, they also found broken and cracked rocks, like almost shale rocks, but these rocks were actually broken by extreme heat. And so it let us know that the rocks themselves were placed in the fire. The fire would then superheat the rocks. The rocks would then put into the trench full of water, and that would bring it to a boil. So it was almost a landscape cook pot or a boil pot. Now, of course, archaeologists only have so much of the information, and folklore gives us other elements of the information, but no one has all of the information because we don't know for sure. Um, but some of these trenches are pretty big, getting like 5 or 6 foot long, and so Laura and I are up in the mountains this very cold December, roaming around, and I felt very inspired, like at the place. Laura, for her work on our Patreon, like does the site visits, records the video and audio and the experiences, so people who can't make it to the island have some experience of the landscape. Me, I hunkered down in the banked earth right beside where the remains of the Fuluchtvia still are, and using her journey practice, Laura's kind of journey practice to explore like my own subconscious and my own kind of connection to the Irish underworld. I came out with a very confused kind of experience, and I tried to relay that into the story. But really, what it comes down to for me is that Fuluchtvia being this early kind of Stone Age place of cooking, like I began to realize that it's fucking fierce more important because a lot of the people will be surviving glaciers, the top end of all of the mountains will be snow and ice and death, whereas the low ends with the glacial melt, like the center of Ireland was a bog, like it was a full on like glacial melt, primordial swamp almost. So as humanity began to move onto the island, it could only exist within the margins, in that space in between the freezing death and the soupy muck. And so the realization that Philoxphia became like, took on such a bigger awareness for me actually, because it was the first attempts of nomadic peoples putting stuff on the landscape, changing the landscape so that they would have a place to come to cook, or indeed to care for people who would be caught by the cold too high up, you know. Um, so I had a very good experience in regards to it, and I tried to relay some of that in the story. So I do hope you enjoy the audio. You can find To Walk the Mountaintops on the in the actual Patreon page as well. It may also be on the website dagda.com, because I do, after a time, put those stories out and available to the broader audience around the world. So I would say thank you very much for being here with me. I really, really appreciate your presence and your experience of all of this. Um, I love my island. I really do. I'm totally biased about it, but I didn't appreciate it as a kid. That's one thing I will say. And it's only with age and maturity and the gift of perspective that I really began to look at things in a much deeper kind of way. And I think that's something we all could do with gift of perspective from now and then. So thank you very much for being with me. I do really appreciate it. And until next time, slán go. Goodbye.